Building your app with liquid glass is very easy to get wrong, and that's because it's just so tempting to put glass everywhere. And that's not how you should do it. In fact, it actually goes against Apple's design guidelines. So in this video, I'll show you some best practices for building with liquid glass so that your app looks beautiful and fits right in on Apple platforms. And the first piece of advice is to let Apple do most of the work and use system components as much as you can. Things like tab bars, toolbars, buttons, menus, navigation, they automatically adopt the liquid glass look, feel, and animations, and you don't really have to do anything. And they adapt and look great on whatever Apple platform you're on, whether that's the iPhone, iPad, Mac, watch, etc. But it's not just about the aesthetics, because when you use system components, you also get the system's adaptive and accessibility behavior. Things like reduced transparency, increased contrast, reduced motion, and Apple's glass variant actually adjusts itself to make sure it remains legible no matter the content underneath it. So if you build all your own custom glass UI components, you also got to build all that stuff as well, but you get it for free with the system components. And this is where you have to be careful when you're prompting your agents. For example, if you just say, make the tab bar glassy, that agent may just go off and make some highly custom glass UI component. And that's not what you want. You want to be more specific with your prompts and say something like, give me the native SwiftUI tab view, and that will get you the liquid glass look and feel you're going for. So best practice number one, use the system components as much as you can. The next best practice is to think of your UI as two layers. There's the control layer, and then there's the content layer. And the control layer is where you should use your liquid glass, not the content layer. In fact, think of this control layer, right, your toolbars, your tab bars, your buttons, navigation, menus, as floating above your content layer, things like your images, text, lists, maps. Because one of the major ideas behind liquid glass is to let your content shine. The controls aren't very prominent, they get out of the way, and they're translucent, so the content below can shine through, right? The content is the star of the show. And that's why you want to avoid putting glass everywhere in your content layer, because now you're going to have glass on glass on glass, and you lose that visual hierarchy. So whether you're handwriting your code or you're prompting your agents, think of the UI in two layers. The control layer floats on top of the content, and the control layer is where the vast majority of your liquid glass component should go. The next best practice involves color. And when you're using color with liquid glass, you should use it sparingly. Because remember, we want the content of your app to be the star of the show. The buttons and controls should get out of the way visually. And of course, there's times when a button or control does need to be prominent so the viewer knows that maybe it's the primary action on the screen. So I'm not saying to never use color, but again, use it sparingly. Don't just add color to all your buttons and controls because it matches your brand. Look at Apple's Notes app, for example. All these controls and buttons have no color, but the primary action, the check mark in the upper right, that has the app's brand color. That's a great example of using color intentionally. It's not overpowering, and it drives the user's attention to the primary action. Now let's talk about concentricity. And to be honest, I had never even heard this word until WWDC 2025 when liquid glass was introduced, and now I see it everywhere in my app development. To put it simply, it's when nearby rounded shapes should feel like their curves belong together instead of having a random corner radius fighting against each other. And Apple does this beautifully, not only with their software, but with their hardware as well. Take a look at your iPhone if you're on iOS 26 and above with liquid glass. You'll notice things like tab bars or sheets are not only concentric within their specific apps, but they're also concentric with the curve of the phone itself. It's a very cohesive feeling, and it's pretty cool, and that's concentricity. So make sure you're adopting this into your app. A very common example is if you have a card-like UI that has an image or a button in it, you want the corner radius of the inner elements to feel like they belong with the corner radius of the outer card. Because when they're concentric, it just looks and feels so much better. Again, compare it to when there's no concentricity, you can see it just feels off and it feels like a poor design. So when you're writing code or you're prompting your agent to build a design like this, make sure you're telling the agent to use concentricity. And if you want to get real specific, SwiftUI has a concentric rectangle API. So adding something like use the SwiftUI concentric rectangle API to build this is a great way to make sure your agent is going to do concentricity the right way. It's also best practice to adapt the glassy new app icons, and Apple gives you a tool just for this called Icon Composer. Now, app icon best practices and how to use Icon Composer, that deserves an entire video in and of itself, and in fact, we've already done that video. I'll put a link to that in the description so you can check that out. And if you're building an app for Apple platforms, you should check out Bitrig. It's an AI development environment specifically focused on building premium Swift apps for Apple platforms. It's built by the co-creators of SwiftUI that were formerly at Apple, so it integrates amazingly well with Apple's first-party frameworks. It specializes in Swift and SwiftUI, so it already knows how to build with Liquid Glass and will implement these best practices. And it can even create and manage your App Store Connect listing, set up your in-app purchases or subscriptions, and even submit to the App Store for you. The team ships updates on a weekly basis, so the product is getting better and better and better. Check it out at bitrig.com.